1985. The hottest summer in 100 years gripped Los Angeles. Like a demon born from the scorching winds, a serial killer was on the prowl. Before he was captured, more than a dozen people would die, for no other reason than that they crossed paths with Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker.
Los Angeles police today added more killings to those already linked with the murderer called the Night Stalker.
Patrols and warned residents to lock their doors and windows and increase indoor lighting.
Let's get everyone mobilized together for self-defense in this valley. Who wants to be next? I don't. No one else does.
With his final vicious assault on a Mission Viejo couple, Ramirez escaped in a stolen car. The vehicle was recovered complete with a clear set of fingerprints, which police traced to Ramirez, whom they knew as a 25-year-old drifter with a lengthy history of traffic and drug arrests. An all-points bulletin was issued for Ramirez on August 30th, his mugshot broadcast on television, and he was captured by civilians in East Los Angeles the following day, mobbed and beaten as he tried to steal a car.
An officer takes Richard Ramirez into custody.
And he saved Richard's life because they were going to do him. They were going to toast him.
His head bandaged from the beating he had received, Ramirez was moved to the county jail, protected by 50 armed officers. On arrival in his holding cell, he seemed anxious to confess. "I want the electric chair," he said. "They should have shot me in the street." Over the next few weeks, there were many opportunities for the press to film the Night Stalker as he was brought from prison to be questioned. He confessed to investigators, "I love to kill people. I love to watch them die. I love all that blood." The gaunt, black-clad figure claimed to have committed 20 murders. He was eventually charged with 14 counts of murder, 5 of attempted murder, 2 of kidnapping, 7 of rape, 19 of burglary, 6 of robbery, and 15 charges of sexual assault. His arrest was a personal triumph for Detective Sergeant Salerno, who had brought together the task force and led the hunt.
It was the most difficult case I've worked.
Why is that?
First off, it's the most complex.
I was relieved because I knew citizens were safe. I knew we had the right guy. And I knew my family would be coming back home. So it's a good day.
With so many crimes to consider, it took 2 years just to bring Ramirez to the preliminary hearing on the 6th of March, 1987. Then legal delays spun the process out by another 2 years. In that time, from his cell at San Quentin, he made a full confession, then retracted it, and constantly changed his mind about who he wanted to represent him. But this was not allowed to delay Ramirez's first public appearance at his arraignment. Hiding behind his attorneys, he gave an ambiguous reply when asked to plead.
Waive and give up your right to enter your plea today?
Yes.
And do you waive and give up your right to be taken to a preliminary hearing within 10 days of today?
Yes.
Ramirez would be charged with 13 murders and 40 other counts of sodomy, rape, and assault. He chose as his lawyers 2 young and inexperienced attorneys, Arturo and Daniel Hernandez.
We're ready to enter a plea of not guilty.
They had never before tried a murder case. The Hernandezes would delay the trial for years with pre-trial motions and repeated requests for postponement. Ramirez took the opportunity to work on his persona, alternately sitting sullenly, flashing satanic symbols, or simply seething at the world. He had finally achieved the fame he dreamed of as a child. But the delays could not last forever. In January of 1989, Richard Ramirez would finally face a jury that would determine if he was indeed the Night Stalker. After years of delay, the man who held Los Angeles in terror for months finally faces a jury.
In the course of his 1989 trial for multiple murder, the haughty looks and bad attitude of serial killer Richard Ramirez inspired a startling new brand of cult appeal among many of the nation's disaffected youth. Playing his perverse role of a rock star-styled rebel to the hilt, Ramirez even cultivated a devoted female fan following. In jail, he told a fellow inmate, "I've killed 20 people, man. I love all that blood."
And he would sit there, you know, just staring everybody down, and you couldn't help but feel uneasy.
The prosecution is led by Philip Halpin. Charge by charge, and week after week, Halpin details the gruesome evidence of rape and torture, shooting and stabbing.
You had horrible things, eye gougings and terrible stabbings and people being terrified in their homes. And yet, there were these young women who came to court and were Richard Ramirez groupies. They thought he was cute. They thought that he was handsome. They were, I suppose, mesmerized by the whole mystique.
I'll never forget the photographs that I saw. They were very graphic, very violent. Things that you just hear about or you see maybe in a movie.
While Prosecutor Halpin continues to methodically present his case, Arturo and Daniel Hernandez do little in their cross-examination to knock it down.
They had their hearts in it, but they did not know enough about legal procedure to really put on a good defense. And I think they may have also been hampered by their client, who was not particularly interested in putting on a good defense and did not assist them greatly. He seemed detached from the whole thing. Occasionally he would have an outburst, and when he had an outburst it was big headlines.
I won't come back in here again, you understand that? This trial is a joke.
He did have a way with words.
The defense team shows signs of strain. Arturo complains of health problems and asks for a recess. Some days, Daniel doesn't come to court at all. Judge Michael Tynan orders them both back into court.
Testimony is going to show once.
In May, the defense begins to present its case. The Hernandezes, realizing they need help, enlist Ray Clark, a more experienced defense attorney.
Who do you defend if you don't defend him? I mean, if you don't defend Richard Ramirez, who? It's the worst among us who needs the best defense.
Clark re-energizes the defense team. He tries to raise doubts about the prosecution case and builds his own.
Our defense strategy had to be alibi. That's the only way that you could win. You couldn't say, I was in this lady's apartment, but I didn't shoot her husband, or I didn't blah, blah, blah. You have to say, I wasn't there. Some other dude did it.
But the strategy doesn't hold up.
It seemed like we had some alibis which didn't pan out very well. His father, I believe, was one, an alibi, and I think they blew us out of the water on that. But no, we didn't have great alibi witnesses.
Finally, on July 26th, the case goes to the jury. On September 20th, the jury reaches its unanimous decision.
We, the jury, in the above entitled action, having found the defendant, Richard Ramirez, guilty of the murder of Jenny Vinco.
It is the same for every charge. Now the trial enters the penalty phase, and it is up to the Hernandezes to try to keep their client off death row.
They really presented very little of what you usually have to try to save a defendant. Psychological profile, background on what made him the way he was. One of the lawyers actually argued that Richard Ramirez might be the devil, and if so, the devil deserves sympathy too.
With little mitigating evidence, the jury has no choice in its recommendation to Judge Tynan.
It is the judgment and sentence of this court that Richard Ramirez shall suffer the death penalty. This penalty is to be inflicted within the walls of the state prison in San Quentin, California.
On November 7th, 1989, Richard Ramirez is sentenced to die in the gas chamber 19 times. But first, he addresses the court.